Okay, thank you everyone for coming to the final Wednesday afternoon discussion of the 2024-2025 year. And we're going out on a high note. We could not top this actually. We've got our two philosophy major seniors talking about interdisciplinarity. So please.
My name is Aiyla. I'm a double major in psychology and philosophy.
My name is Lillian. I'm a double major in biochemistry, molecular biology, and philosophy.
My name is Patty, and I'm a double major in English, creative writing, and philosophy.
We wanted to put together this discussion because as of right now, we're the only seniors that are majoring in philosophy, and we know a lot of people will take philosophy classes, but maybe aren't inclined to major in it because they may not think you can really do anything with it, or you don't want to solely major in it, because it does decrease your options for after undergrad. Like there really is, you go to grad school for philosophy and then you get an academic position, or you end up doing something else, but it does decrease your options. So I think all of us kind of chose to double major and incorporate philosophy into our studies rather than solely majoring in it. So we just wanted to walk y'all through our experiences in deciding to do this, tell you a little bit about some of the classes we've taken, and then also just answer any questions if anyone is thinking about majoring and is maybe on the edge, not really sure what you want to do. And we'd love to answer any of those. But
then I can tell my story. So I'll tell you all how I ended up getting sucked into philosophy. So I came to Hendrix and was like, I'm going to major in something science. I don't know, whatever. Get to freshman year, I'm going to take my gen ed requirements. I ended up switching out of a course and I went to my advisor, went to go in the catalog, and there were literally two classes open that I could even take. One was sociology and one was philosophy. At that time, I thought both were a little dumb. I'm sorry, I have to say it. But I ended up just randomly choosing philosophy, a class called What is Real, taught by Dr. Dow here. And I really, honestly, I went to that class and was like, thank goodness it's only one semester. I'm just going to get through my one semester of philosophy. I'll never do it again. I'll leave. And I just will act like it never happened. I did not leave. I loved the way that it was, unlike my other major, because in BC&B, like everything's either right or wrong. Like you do math and it's right or it's wrong. You're asked a question on an exam, it's a multiple choice question, you're right or wrong. And philosophy was the one class that I took where there was literally never going to just be this right or wrong, because even if there's something asked, like, what did this philosopher say? There's always a different interpretation. So it offered a really nice contrast to my everyday, just like go to class and just get lectured at and learn content, memorize it, do math, and then more of like, I read on my own, I interpret what things are like. So that's why I stuck around. And then they suckered me into minoring, and then you'll see on the paper, I guess we can talk about this later, but the minor is so close to the major. So if you don't think that you can start as a philosophy major, I didn't. Did you start as a major or minor?
Major. Minor.
If you start as a minor, it's only 6 courses, and by the time you get to 6, you're like, well, shoot, I might as well go to 10, because only a few more. So
actually, I guess I did. My plan was to minor, and then I realized that all of the extracurriculars that I needed to take, I could just fill with philosophy classes. So I ended up majoring. But I actually went to school in Colorado for a year at Boulder, and I decided to move back because I grew up in Conway. And I didn't really like Boulder because it was really big, and like the classes that we were in, it was these huge lecture halls. And it was just, I wanted to go to a smaller school, but I took religious studies classes there. And I came here thinking that I was going to major in psychology and then minor in religious studies or major in it. But I ended up taking ethical theory with Dr. Avandi, and I kind of just fell in love with it. I also realized that not everyone enjoyed it as much as I did, which was kind of an indicator that it was something that I was passionate in. And then as I started taking more classes, I realized how much it meshed, especially with psychology. Like a lot of philosophical theories are developed by psychologists and then like tested through empirical studies. And I found that I was able to kind of be a critical thinker in both fields because I was able to see where philosophy kind of got psychological interpretations wrong and where psychology got philosophical theories wrong. And so I think for me, it just worked out perfectly to major in both because they do go so hand in hand. But even in like some of my extracurriculars, I really only take humanities classes. I'm not a big STEM person other than psychology. But I found like in my English classes and some of my history classes, like just taking philosophy classes and learning how to interpret and create, like see readings from so many different point of views, I think really helped me synthesize information better. And I was able to not only just ask better questions, but kind of pay attention to the text in a way that I never learned how to do before, which is hard to put into words, but I think philosophy really helped open that part of my mind up.
Yeah, I actually came to Hendrix as a like wanting to do chemistry and math. And that was fall semester freshman year. At the end, I realized I can't do either of those things. And so that like over Christmas break, the only class that was open was ancient philosophy. So I was like, God, I'll take it. And so I took it. That was actually a really fun class. And that was freshman year. And then all sophomore year, I just took up Blondie classes. And I've actually taken every history of philosophy course that they offered in these past 4 years. And so, and then I finally, like, Blondie was like, I think you have enough room. You can fit it in junior year, like the first semester of junior year. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. And then like a few days later, Campolo came. I was like, you're too late. Blondie already got it. He's like, you can do a major. And I was like, got you. I'm already doing it. So that junior year, I declared as double major with English creative writing. Honestly, I've taken so many history and philosophy courses mainly because I do like writing about these people. So my thesis for creative writing is actually a historical fiction on a woman philosopher that I learned about in one of the Blondie's classes. And so I've kind of mixed my creative writing side with all these different philosophers that I know and trying to write their story. And so that's how I've came about and commingled them in my two majors.
I think one important thing to notice is like Patty, for example, with English took like every history course. And I'm a little bit more like I do STEM. I've taken a lot of like the ethics courses, the more science, like scientist courses like philosophy of science, philosophy of mind, theories of knowledge, like that more kind of stuff. We both still did the same major, but our ways about going of the major was like slightly different, kind of just fitting to more like what we wanted from the major. And that's what I actually like about the philosophy major is it's not so many courses that you're fighting your way through to get them all. It's more like you get to actually make a choice in what you want to say rather than, BCMB, we are told every semester what to take and there's no choice in that. So it's kind of nice to have that choice.
Like I took a lot of the values courses, which kind of corresponded to psychology. So you really can kind of pick and choose to fit it into what other disciplines that you're studying. I guess we can talk about like our favorite courses that we've taken.
Yes.
Actually, the major minor, if you press it back, we can print out some more too if people.
Oh, yeah, do you want yours? Yeah. Yeah. So
I think
does anybody want to do y'all need insurance? Yes. Yes, please submit some here. I think probably my favorite course. So I liked ancient philosophy because you kind of get like that really kind of original thought. Like I saw a joke, you were talking about a joke about like I saw on TikTok and it was like, yeah, I would have also had the same thoughts as like Plato and Aristotle had I been like one of the first 12 people alive. Yeah. Which is kind of true because like everything relates back to them. But I like that one just because you get like you do it and then you start like just doing things in everyday life and then you realize like how many things are just literally just a reference to all of them. It's kind of cool. It's kind of fun.
I think my favorite has been early modern philosophy and then tied with that 17th century women philosophers.
That's my exact same answer.
Yeah.
Those two classes.
The 17th century women philosophers. It was a special elective with Dr. Blondie. and we talked about it's like five
Yeah,
different,
5 different women.
and it was like some pretty it was one book that we were reading out of, and it was very niche, and like they had recovered these letters from these philosophers, and there was one with Princess Elizabeth who was corresponding with Descartes, and that it really
That's what my thesis is.
yeah. It, it's really fascinating, and it's something I don't think you would ever think to investigate in a way, or to try and find those philosophers. So I really appreciated Dr. Bondi for offering that class in the first place, because we do learn about a lot of white men. Yeah, it's just
Yeah, those are the exact 2 classes I would say. And ancient philosophy, because that was my first one.
Mhm.
On one side, you get the minor, which looks fantastically a lot like the same time as the major, right? So you just pick one of the history classes for the minor, and major you get to pick 2. So again, if you start the minor and you just like work your way down the list, you pick one of the history classes, one of the philosophical problems, one of the values, and then you're like, oh, I want to change. It is so easy to add to it. I'm not gonna read. I know you did. So
Also, you can take a lot of them to fulfill your like gen eds, like values courses, your W2, your W1.
There's no more differences.
There's no more W2. Okay, well, your writing courses, I guess. I think everyone should take logic. Like, even if you're not gonna major in philosophy, logic will help you be it will help you digest news a lot better. Like, just being able to look for logical fallacies within the media, like, no matter what it is, it just helps you be a critical thinker about that. And it's not a hard course. Dr. Bondi makes it very easy and straightforward. You do have to pay attention, but I think anyone, whether or not you're a philosophy major or planning on it, should take logic.
Yeah, that would be my top.
Yeah.
Any questions? If you have any questions? We will love to answer them. You can ask what class we hated.
David?
You guys talk a little bit about the senior seminar.
Yeah, so we took the senior seminar with Dr. Campolo, and it was combined with the study of mind students, which was just 2 majors. And we read a 400-page book on the philosophical investigation into neuroscience. And it was fun. It was a lot. There was a lot of reading. It definitely put all of our skills from the past 2 or 3 years to test. But I think we had a lot of fun. It was mainly discussion. Like, we read a chapter because it was a Tuesday, Thursday class. So we would read a chapter for each meeting, and then we would spend the majority of the time just discussing and kind of dissecting the argument, picking out the good and the bad parts, and learning how to synthesize, like, how to really read dense philosophical arguments, and then also learning how to form our own objections and being able to write like a review of it.
Yeah, it's very different because I'm in another senior seminar, and my major's pretty big. We have like 25 people in there. We sit and listen to a lecture pretty much like every week. We're just learning how to like make presentations. We're learning how to write research papers. We're kind of just getting lectured at. The philosophy senior seminar is much more like a group of philosophers hanging out at a table talking about philosophical things, which is not what you get in every senior seminar. It's a lot more interactive. I mean, I think a lot of the time Dr. Campolo wasn't even talking. We were arguing with each other or discussing things or objecting to what he said. But it's not lecture anymore. I think that's what's so fun about it. So a lot of senior seminars are still lecture, and you still are just, doing normal class things, but it's completely different.
I think it was also just a lot of fun to focus a whole semester on one book and then argue about it with people who also are thinking different things. Like Lillian and I have never agreed on anything. Like, not one thing we've ever agreed on philosophically, but we do love taking classes together for that reason.
Actually, we know we're going to. We don't. All three of us don't really agree on these. Sometimes we all do.
Yeah. Usually not a thing.
Chris, you have a question?
Yeah.
No, forget. Oh, what did your parents think when you told them you were gonna major in philosophy?
Get another major. Do too. Well, thankfully I well, I was gonna do just philosophy and they were like, oh, you need to get something else in there too. I do have an English and philosophy major for that reason.
I'm a bit of a special case. My stepdad is a philosopher, so for it, there wasn't really much discussion there.
My parents like to forget and like to tell people that I'm a biochemistry major, and I always like to say and philosophy after every time they say it. So that gets said a lot in my house when they talk to people.
Funny.
And then people are always like, whoa, that's so weird, so different, it's so crazy. Like, how are you doing both? But like it makes sense to me sometimes. Yeah, I don't think they really like they know, but do they? No, I don't really.
It's the coolest professor.
Yeah, Dr. Bonnie's my favorite.
It's gotta be done. That would be coolest.
Cool.
He's in a rock band.
That is true. There is a professor. He's in a
He's
rock
actually he's not here because he's getting a tattoo. So
band. That is also true.
yeah.
Seems that one.
The best semester, like one of the times, like him being super cool was the time that documentary came out and he was in it.
Yeah.
Do you know about this? Oh my gosh, there's like this documentary that comes out about this thing from like the 80s. And Dr. Dow's like, by the way, there's a picture of me in it because I was there. It was like about a whole theme part of like a lawsuit and it was some crazy scandal. And he's like, yeah, by the way, I was there. And there's a picture of me in the documentary. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
See, that's so many times. I didn't know he was in it.
Exactly. I think he did. Well, like, was it like, no, it's just
That'd be pretty good.
so that's pretty cool.
No, I say I took the majority of my classes with Dr. Blondie. I really didn't take Dr. Campolo until ancient. And then I've only taken 2 classes with Dr. Campolo and 2 classes with Jamie. So I'm a bit biased towards Dr. Blondie, but he just happens to teach some of my more special interests in this.
I've had a lot. I like how Dr. Campolo calls people out in class. That's pretty. It's very interactive. Your classes are very interactive.
Sometimes a bit too interesting. Yeah.
What kinds of skills do you think distinctively have been exercised and sharpened in you by philosophy?
For me, I think learning how to listen, like really listen, and then also like in general a critical thinker, like not taking things at face value.
I think to argue, like I'm like super indecisive, but when it comes to these, I'm gonna argue about it. And I fear I've never been an arguer, but alas, now I am, especially in essays. I used to like be so passive in essays, and now I can actually pick a side and be like, I don't know, pick a side. I fear you have to do that at some point, especially in literary analysis essays. So definitely exercise that.
Yeah, I came from like a really small town. I grew up in a really small town in Texas. So I would say like there's not a lot of variety of viewpoints per se. And like people were just okay, like you had your own viewpoint and that was cool. And I don't think that I was able to think very critically of what I was actually thinking or take the perspective of other people. And so like in philosophy, like you're often challenged, like you can't just say why you think something. You have to like dig deeper into like the causes, but also take the perspective of other people and like what another philosophical view would be. It's like I've definitely gotten much better at like saying, you know, yes, there's this view for this reason, but also let me take on and act like I'm a completely different person with a completely different view and argue back against myself. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, arguing against yourself is make your point is yeah, debunking your own stuff.
It is helpful.
Do you read things outside of philosophy differently than you used to? It's critical, reading out, making there's a very better. Really. Since what the author's trying to say.
Yeah, I will say I find plot holes a lot more in my daily reading.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of deconstruct a lot of arguments in my head more than I did before.
I'm a lot more critical about like in science, I guess, per se, for myself. You know, I'm reading a lot of research papers and people will say, well, this happened and this happened, so we conclude this. And because of things like logic, I'm like, oh, no, we did not conclude anything, you know. So in science aspect, it does ruin the magic a little bit of like these magical science discoveries, because sometimes they're just proven logic itself. Kind of like the philosophical foundations of neuroscience. Like, yes, that disproved a lot of philosophical like philosophy as psychology science.
I think for me, psychology, I kind of scrutinize some of the studies that I read, because especially I'm in moral psychology right now, and the way that they take philosophical theories that I have read and they apply it to these empirical studies, it's kind of interesting to see how much they aren't actually getting, I guess. Like they kind of take it and run with it without really sitting with what it means for the results. If that makes sense.
I think my experience when I was undergraduate is that I found that it was fun to do philosophy, but I could not explain that to anyone. So how would you explain it?
It's fun to debate, like, especially sometimes you can come up with bizarre scenarios that, like, we also have philosophical society, and like one of our meetings we just sat for 2 hours like arguing about eugenics and like coming up with bizarre situations where it's like I would never say this to anyone else who didn't like understand that I wasn't being like, that wasn't my actual stance on it, but being able to kind of like argue like that, it is fun to us, I think.
I think sometimes I'm like just like out in the world existing, doing things, and I'm just like thinking a little bit. And I have a thought. I'm like, wow, that was really philosophically complex. Like that was such a cool thought just then. And I don't say anything, but I'm like, wow, that was actually pretty cool that my little brain just thought that out. And then you'll like have a thought, and then you like look it up or something, and somebody else thought the same thing, and they're like really famous. And that's like my most fun is when I had a philosophical thought and somebody else also thought that thing, and I'm like, wow, that was like good.
Mm-hmm.
Or when Pat and I are just talking back and forth and we realize we came up with something really good. Yeah. So we come up with something so good and it's so entertaining because you'll just like come up with the most random stuff, but it's somehow significant. I think that's fun.
Does it lead you to more like a closed-minded person or an open-minded person? Because obviously we grow up with views and stuff, and taking all these classes, does it make you a better person to debate like your own view, just staying closed-minded, or does it lead you to open-minded?
I think sometimes, like personally, I can get a bit close-minded. Like I really hone in on my argument, and like I think in a way it helps me get out of that close-mindedness. Like all I have to do is hear it in a different kind of like sentence in a way, or read an objection or a different theory, or even when I start writing like my own papers and then I kind of like propose hypothetical objections that I'm like, oh, that's actually like something I need to consider. So I think it does, like you can still fall into that cycle of closed-mindedness, but I think it does help you find the resources to get out of it and be more open-minded.
Yeah, and I will say in most of the classes, we're going to read both sides of the argument anyway. So you'll read the first one and be like, oh, that guy cooked. Then you'll read the next one and be like, oh, maybe he didn't cook. And now you're confused, and now you have to say which one you like better and which one you think is more right about something where they almost have equal footing on, but coming from two different angles. So yeah, I would say it makes you think a little open-minded.
Yeah, I agree with Aiyla. There's been times where I've been kind of closed-minded and I'm like, this is what I'm gonna write my essay about. It's gonna be really good. You start writing that essay and you find one person online who's like convinces you that you're completely wrong and that everything you've just written in that essay is just like your view was wrong. And so like, even when you do lean closed-minded, there's kind of like something in there that's like, okay, well, you just have to be closed-minded, you've got to argue against an opposite side, and that opposite side might convince you that you were being closed-minded. So it kind of it pushed me back and forth, I guess. But I say open-minded, like ethics and medicine, for example, there were views in that class that I didn't even know had existed. So even if I was close-minded coming in, thinking that I had one view and I still had the same view after, there were so many other views that I learned about.
I mean, I think theories of knowledge, right? It's epistemology. So like, how do we learn things and how do we find the truth value in things? And I find, like, I'll read one theory and I'm like, that doesn't sound right. And I get really like, I'm like, that can't be right. But then I'll read an objection to it and I'm like, yes, I agree with that. But then I read the philosopher's reply to it and he kind of like, they'll be able to argue further for their point. And I think that kind of puts me back on their side. Yeah, so it's a lot of flip-flop.
Reading with a principle of charity is certainly it's what was drove into me. But it's got its flip side too. At some point, you have to take a stand. We've accepted now because you've been reading charitably and taking the best interpretation of it. Now they all look pretty good. So it's yeah, you got to sort of turn that around and I wouldn't say be closed-minded, but start to get the scalpel out and start cutting away that.
And you definitely can't just be like completely open-minded and just pass into everything. Because there's a point where like everything starts to contradict each other and you really gotta take a stance or you're just wrong. But yeah. You try to like, I don't know, in theories of knowledge, I try to be open-minded sometimes. I'm like, I'm gonna be open-minded and we'll have like 3 theories in a row. And I'm like, well, I gotta pick one. I can't just keep letting all 3 of them because they're all arguing against each other and someone's gotta win there. Chris, did you have something?
I was just thinking, I was wondering if there's something freeing about having a major that you're not trying to get a career out of. Like, I think we're very nervous about the future and about graduation and wondering how your major is going to translate to a job. But if you've already decided that that's not what philosophy is for you, is that a good thing, or does it feel like you're wasting time? Or
I could have graduated in 3 years. So like I could have just left a year ago with my biochemistry degree, would have done it, would have left. I pretty much only stayed the extra year just to kind of see out getting my philosophy degree. I didn't really need the whole year, but I wanted to keep taking classes. It was kind of fun. I'm literally not using philosophy at all. Like I'm going to med school. I'm not using like I will use philosophy, but not as like I needed it on my degree. I could have just taken the classes and I could have left. But for me, it wasn't like, oh, I'm just wasting my time because I took extra time to stay and do it. But it's kind of fun to say, like, I'm just going to have these thoughts for the purpose of me thinking about it and me just doing it. The grade doesn't really matter. I don't need the degree in my transcript, really. It's just kind of like fun to do it for the purpose of doing it. Like to think of new things, you learn some history about, you know, how people think. But it is kind of nice because like I don't have a bunch of things hinging on it, you know? It doesn't matter. Like, say if I want to voice my opinion, I get a bad grade when I say somehow, it's okay. It's fine. It doesn't matter, you know. So it is kind of, for my sake, it's pretty freeing because it, you know, I've got my one thing that I have to worry about really hard, keeping perfect and making sure I'm doing really well all the time. And then I've got something else that I can kind of just explore as more of a fun option.
I mean, it's a bit different for me because I don't plan on becoming, I guess, strictly philosophical professor, but I do, my plan is eventually to get my PhD in some sort of interdisciplinary psychology and philosophy program. There's a few across the United States. There's not a lot, but like specifically cognitive science. I think I would never only majored in philosophy. So I think it is the psychology was kind of like I had to major in them both, or else I don't think I would have felt secure about my future. But I do think I am going to carry philosophy with me throughout my studies. But it is kind of freeing. Like, I don't feel as stressed in my philosophy classes as I do in some of my other courses. And I think I enjoy writing philosophy papers more than I enjoy like writing about empirical studies. But I think it's important to have both for what I want to do. So in a way, yes, in a way, no.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Aiyla. In a way, yes. I mean, I applied to both English and philosophy graduate programs. None of them gave me enough money, so I am taking a gap year. But alas, I will return back to school at some point to hopefully get a PhD in something mixed with English and philosophy. I really just like writing about like historical figures in philosophy and mixing that with my creative writing, which I've done in my thesis and I've done in past classes in my creative writing. And so hopefully I can do that. And also like the historical nature of these figures is also like doing more archival work, which I've done before. And hopefully I'll take that with me. So I do think it was a more integral part than it was for like Lillian stuff for me, but I feel like I am the least secure in my two majors because I did do English, creative writing, and philosophy. But yeah, that's what I liked. So
I will say if you are planning on applying to grad school or like especially like med school or like I'm thinking like STEM grad school, they actually really like when people don't just major in science. They really actually like to see two majors. Specifically because you can say, yes, I took the requirements to get into like graduate school and I'm excited about that, but I also have other interests. And especially like interviews like right after graduation or for like graduate positions that aren't for philosophy, they love to hear that you actually care about things that are not only part of the program and that you have passion. So like for me, I got to talk about that all the time because they were like, what are you interested in other than the requirements that we made you to take to get into the school? I actually liked philosophy. And I got to stick around and do it. So that's kind of probably why it was so freeing. It's like I should say, like, I just did it because I liked it, not because I thought that I had to do it to get my job, almost. Obviously different if you want a job in philosophy.
I'm gonna say that. No, I think there was a talk from the U of A grad school, the philosophy grad program, and he did put kind of like the future of philosophy into perspective. Like it is really hard to find an academic position right now, and the positions they're looking for are kind of like people doing philosophy of AI, which is not really something I'm interested in. So that really put into perspective, like I am kind of on the right track of leaning more towards on the psychology side, but like I guess my major plan is to apply philosophical theories and kind of like my own theories into empirical studies and actually testing to see if it is true of human nature rather than like just writing and teaching, I guess.
You had to change the major somehow or add a class about something. Or just change the way it's laid out. What would you do? You were designing the curriculum. What did you hate, in other words?
I think I would maybe dumb down Hegel a bit. I still don't think I understand his philosophy. Late modern in general was it was difficult. I think it was probably
that's probably my most difficult.
Yeah, like I enjoyed it, but it was really hard to digest all that information. And it was a lot of reading as well, which is normally okay, but it was just like really dense reading. So I felt like kind of cramming I think we went over 4, like 4 in one semester. It was a lot because I feel like it's not like it's not like ancient or like being able to kind of like skim through, not skim, but like flip certain writings and like still get the main idea. Like with late modern, I think you really have to read like the entire works, and that's difficult. I don't know if it should be like split up or just kind of maybe focus on 3 instead of 4.
I think one thing that I would have liked to see like added, because we get like ancient philosophy, which kind of, it's obviously like ancient philosophy, or we have like ancient Christian philosophy, which is kind of designated to a certain group of people, right? It's like the people who could be doing philosophy, but there is some also like really interesting philosophy, like Native American philosophy, like indigenous people's philosophy is really interesting, but is often kind of overlooked. Also, like when there were slaves here in the United States, there was a subsection of philosophy that was coming from people who were enslaved. It's kind of like Boethius, you know, being in prison, or we think of like philosophy when they were in prison. Really interesting. But we kind of don't get to see, sometimes we don't get to see those like subsets of different cultures who are also doing philosophy. Like we talk about the Dark Ages. It was really only dark in one part of the world, and there was a whole like flourishing amount of philosophy. But when we tend to study traditional philosophy, we only get kind of like that view. So I think for me, I would like love to see a class that was like focusing on like more the groups of people in philosophy who are not focused on. It's like women philosophers kind of did that. Nice to see.
I've already pushed for this, but I would appreciate more Western philosophy, like the religious studies courses I have taken. It was mainly on like Buddhism and Hinduism and those different religions, but also I think the philosophies within them. I see a lot of it within some of the more Greek ancients, but we don't really get to talk about the religions that they come from, or like at least how it's spread across the world and how alike and
Yeah. So what was the suggestion then?
like a Western philosophy class.
I feel like that's what we do. So
Sorry, Eastern.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
Directions.
Yeah.
I mean, this is hard when you have, three people.
Right.
Yeah.
We did have that for years. Especially to both China and India.
David.
So I ask where you're in relation to philosophy.
Ethics and metaphysics for me, which is not a popular subset.
I like kind of like logic, ethics, not metaphysics, not grouping into David, you're laughing because you know, but like don't put me in the whole metaphysics. I'm not there yet.
Mine's definitely probably like history, like 17th century, Descartes, all of them. I've just done so much research on it for my thesis that I feel like I know too much.
I guess like, and within metaphysics, like what personhood is, like what defines, like what is reality, but also what are we?
Yeah, I would also say mine is like epistemology and like study of language too. Or philosophy of language.
I also wish we had a philosophy course.
Yeah. Or language talk. Big concern.
I mean, the other thing is it's such a huge, even just Western philosophy is such a huge stretch of time. It's slow, right? So to get you to where, it's how to cover. You can only sort of shine a spotlight. You can't lead up to each one of those in a good, easy way.
I will say that the courses, like even with our recommendations, are very diverse and very different. Like I feel like, I mean, there are some people, hashtag Descartes, who never goes away, and he is like in every class mentioned somehow or some way, and Aristotle and Plato, they're mentioned all the time. But they're like every class, there's usually not a ton of overlap between them. Like there's usually, it's very different, like what you're studying, what you're reading for the most part.
What kind of person should not major in philosophy?
If you don't like reading
Or writing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you are very analytic and you hate reading and don't want to write more than 1-page papers, then I wouldn't recommend it.
you can't sit in class and listen and actually intake information. Like there's some people who like love slides and love to just like write things off the slides. Like there's lots of people in STEM who are like that.
That is not.
That is not what you want to be like in philosophy.
I don't think any of y'all use PowerPoint present or like any presentations. Like on occasion there will be, but it's a lot of either like just general discussion and Dr. Campolo's classes, and then Dr. Blondie mainly uses the chalkboard, which I love. He's very good at writing like the chart, like flow charts in a way, which I think helps synthesize the information. And then with Dr. Dow, we really just kind of follow the text and read different sections and then talk about them out loud. So it is a discussion class. I wouldn't say that you have to be someone who wants to talk the entire time, but just someone who's willing to listen and like really be attentive in class, I guess.
I was gonna say like you shouldn't be a philosophy major if you're not willing to be a little bit controversial sometimes. Like some views are a little out there and they're a little controversial, and sometimes you have to like those things have to be talked about to make progress in them. And I think it's really limiting if you're kind of one of those people who's like kind of like scared to do it. Obviously you can learn to do it, but if you're really like, I will not say anything controversial and I will never step like even close to the line of like we're getting kind of controversial, I feel like that makes it really hard sometimes to be in philosophy.
I think one of the great things about these classes though is they kind of make it easy because most of the classes you have to write some sort of reflection on what we just read, and like just like the homework studio and Campolo's, or it's just like you write about what you read or write about what you read, which I think is extremely helpful. And even if you're not asked to do that, I feel like annotating your readings heavily helps you process the information so much more. And so if you can't do that.
I wouldn't say you have to annotate.
I wasn't saying you have to annotate, but I would say you have to think about what you just
Yeah.
read, like in some capacity. Because you will talk about it.
The reading's the big one.
Yeah.
There you will like if you take a philosophy class, there will be at least one person in the class who's like, I did not read. I just couldn't do it. I'm like, what are you doing?
Especially because it's not really like some of, at least my history with other courses, where like they'll assign readings, but you don't actually really talk about them in class. Like the assigned reading is the only topic we're going to be talking about. But then also I think it's a lot less outside coursework than other classes, and it is pretty spread out. Like it's usually 3 to 5 page papers throughout the course of the semester. Dr. Campolo doesn't assign papers or essays. It's all homework, but you do have to do homework every night. And then for the other 2 professors, it's they're never like big papers. I think Dr. Dow is now doing just 1 course paper, and you do reflections throughout the semester, which aren't too bad. I think it's like 500 words each, and it's once a week. So it is, I think, a lot more spread out than some of the other courses, where it is kind of like exam after exam or after quiz. So yeah, it's like I don't want to scare y'all off with the reading. Like it's no more than an hour or 2.
You shouldn't be willing to do it every day.
Yeah.
It's not like you're gonna sit down and you're gonna read for 8 hours and you're gonna be sad that you did nothing all day. It's just kind of you have to get yourself in kind of that groove of like, well, I need to read 30 minutes today or 30 minutes tomorrow to make sure that I'm keeping up with my readings along the way. You can't be a reading hater.
Yeah.
Try something.
Got like 15 minutes left. So.
If y'all want to ask really interesting questions, we can just tell them to like cover their ears and ask us.
What's the, I'll just go away. What's the biggest difference between philosophy and your other major?
Psychology is just data driven. But not everyone agrees with this, but I do think psychology is just a form of philosophy.
Well,
Because it did develop from philosophy. They started actually empirically studying it. but I think it just goes hand in hand.
Mm.
So I find myself applying both of them.
I find that people in my major are often really petty and competitive with each other for grades. Just in general, they kind of like to, they get a little bit like, they don't like to study with each other because they don't want to help somebody else do better on the exam. They don't like when people get better grades than them. They don't, you know, it's just a little bit more competitive. I guess because they're fighting out for graduate positions, essentially, is how they view it. Like everybody in class with is kind of your competitor. It's less collaborative. But I find like in philosophy, we are very collaborative and we don't compete. Like we might argue jokingly about philosophy, but it's never competitive. Obviously, my major is very data driven, whatever, but more importantly, I feel like the people in philosophy are more like, we actually want to talk to each other. We really do want to discuss philosophy with each other. We do want to help each other if we have a question about an essay. We work together. If we're studying for an exam, we work together. So I find that it's much more collaborative than my other major. Just my major tends to be a little bit competitive.
I think because it is a smaller department, like I feel closer. I feel like at more of a community within this major than the psychology major. Like, I mean, I've collaborated with people on like our research, but like there's not as much kind of out of class discussion happening.
Yeah, I feel like my two majors, like with English, are the most common out of us three. I will say the creative juices I have for my English major are usually tapped out, and philosophy gives me like kind of a fresh air that I kind of need because I write so much. Like I took 3 creative writing courses last semester, and going into seminar for philosophy was really amazing because I did not have to like think about word choice of like what I was writing besides like what does word mean, like which I felt like was so much easier at that time. So I was so burnt out on writing something new material rather than thinking about what material is, I guess. So, and then that like kind of revitalized me. I'm like, okay, now I'm thinking differently. Let me go write something. So they kind of go hand in hand. I would say the biggest difference is that I'm constantly workshopping in creative writing classes, whereas it's kind of like in philosophy we're workshopping theories. So it's like, I don't know, that difference and writing, workshopping creative writing and workshopping, I guess.
When I write for my major, sometimes they're very like, you probably would see the same thing, but like you're mentioning with English, they're very critical of like your word choice and your sentence structure. Versus here, when I feel like more in philosophy, a lot of time we're just expressing ideas, and some people have very different ways of expressing those ideas. They're kind of all accepted, but there's not really, obviously, grammar and spelling are important. But it's like if I remember one time Dr. Dow was like, I don't care if you spell every word wrong in your sentence, but if I can read it and you express a really good idea, it's still a good idea. It doesn't negate that. So I kind of like that. Sometimes it's kind of like, sometimes ideas are so hard to explain that your grammar is terrible. And like the English wise, but it's like kind of fun to like relax in that way, to let up on that, to really try to explain an idea. I don't know, I kind of like.
Yeah, like for example, Lillian and I's reflections have never looked any more different. Like they are completely different whenever we write about reflecting on something we just read. But they still make sense in some way. But
Probably not to each other.
not to each other.
I used to be a very like computer scientific writer, and I feel like after writing so many philosophy papers, I kind of like loosened up a little bit and allowed myself to like have fun with the writing and kind of like not be so rigid, I guess, because I was like, I'm not writing a scientific article right now, like I'm trying to engage someone. So I think it helped just my writing skills in general, and kind of like not just making it more engaging and like someone would actually want to read it rather than just like reading a very I don't know how to explain it.
Who's your favorite philosopher? Hume.
Nietzsche. I don't even know how to say his name. Although I haven't read all his work, so that might change over the years. But
Yeah.
I also like him.
I have a controversial answer. I like Karl Marx, but that's just me. That's actually one of my favorite. That is my favorite philosopher, which is funny because it's like when you say that name, people are like, "Whoa, that is so radical." But you write so nicely.
Yeah, I think actually reading Karl Marx, especially like even before the Communist Manifesto, like it's really interesting to see kind of how his philosophy was taken. But I think his writings were pretty good.
It's like Plato.
Yeah, I love Plato writing
Yeah.
about songs.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I like fully agree with everything, but it's probably my favorite.
It's fun to read.
Yeah.
Oh, golden sometimes.
At the beginning.
We read a philosopher and he like said something really good. And I was his biggest offender all semester. I was like fighting for my life. I was like, this man is a genius and I just don't get it. I just don't get how smart he is, how perfect he is. And then he absolutely fumbled his theory, took everything back, trashed like into the garbage, his theory. I'm so sad about it. I was his biggest offender. And now I'm on. That's okay.
I guess more recently, I really like Amy Copeland, who's a just moral psychologist. She has a really interesting theory on empathy, which I'm actually writing about for my psychology short reports. I'm able to take kind of like a workshop theory I developed last semester, and I took it and researched what empirical studies are already out there, and I'm synthesizing that to a short paper right now. So that's kind of fun to be able to apply what I learned in my philosophy class to my psychology course.
You said Amy.
Amy Copeland. And that's like a contemporary philosopher. I think she's alive. She should be. As now, I think I looked her up like 30 days ago. She was alive then. I don't know how old, but
Who did I think I was just talking about.
yeah, what's this?
No, but like before this. Yeah. You asked the question, who are these favorite philosophers?
I know you want me to say Descartes, but I read the third meditation. You know, it's not. I don't like how.
Oh, I would say Leibniz.
Yeah,
I would say Leibniz.
yeah,
I'd say Hegel.
yeah. Probably.
Leibniz are fun.
I think Leibniz is much worse than that.
Leibniz.
So it's the fun thing, you read stuff and then you can like hate on somebody, and you can go on Reddit, and then you get to join like the hater of that philosopher fan club, and then it's like the best because like I hate people online love to talk about it. It's wonderful.
And I think like my opinion changes a lot too. Like it really depends on what my attitude is when I'm reading. So the philosophy or the theories. So
I see with people study languages for a long time, they sort of know they've arrived at the point when you start dreaming about language, getting weird philosophy, the car's chasing you, or
I've dreamt like that one thing saying, I forget who says it. Kimball will know, but it's like you can be not in a boat, but you can't not be in a boat. And I dreamt like, I'm not in a boat. Like I got it.
I have like really realistic dreams. Like I basically just I think I dream about class a lot, but not necessarily like philosophers.
Yeah. I think That was so good, Patty.
I think about it way too much.
Sometimes I'll like have like thoughts in my dreams about philosophy that I'll think is like a really good idea. I wake up and I'm like, yes, write it down, it's good. And then like 30 minutes later, that is the worst philosophical
I'm
thought
like
I've
that
ever had.
many
I was like taking a nap the other day and like my alarm, I kept putting it on snooze, but like I was kind of like I was still half asleep and I was like arguing against myself. Like I don't know what was going on, but I woke up and I was like, wow, that was kind of enlightening. And then I was like, what was enlightening? Like, I just dreamt about, but I could like feel that something was going on. Yeah, 5 minutes. Tammy?
Do you think the three of you would have crossed paths on campus? You know, not community philosophy majors.
Hattie and I even had classes before like the three of us
Yeah.
were kind of like, because we all got close in, I guess, early modern. Because we all sat on the same side. And then I think I was the first to declare my major in
Yeah.
philosophy. And then y'all two kind of, so then we all realized that we were the only philosophy majors and that we were going to be taking senior seminar. And so then I think that's when we all kind of became close. But yeah, I don't think outside of this we ever would.
I was actually at the table at like career term,
We did.
but that was like right before we had class
Yeah.
together. So
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think we would have had like too much to say to each other.
No.
Yeah.
Like what are we gonna talk about? You need the best icebreaker. You try to get someone on a date, find somebody that you know something fun with. And if it's philosophy, then
Yeah.
there you go.
There you go.
So is there community around the department and the major? It's different. It's like other departments and majors.
I think so.
So
Cannot be.
Yeah.
Everyone's that. It's
Like I don't even know who, like it's hard to tell who is actually in the psychology department, I guess. And also I took like 3 of the courses at Colorado, and then one of them was my AP Psych course. So I've taken a lot less psychology courses here. Like I've taken more philosophy courses. And I know they have psychology club, but like it's just so big, and I feel like we have different people in each class. So it's like I've gotten close with a few people, but not like the department as a whole. And even the professors, like there's a lot more professors. So there's only like 1 or 2 that I've had repeated classes with. But like in this department, it's like we see each other all the time. Like even if we're not in class together, we see each other in the buildings. We see the professors all the time. I think there's just more opportunity to have that community. And also Ellis, this building is just very homey. Like I don't really want to hang out in DW, no offense. Like some people might enjoy that, but I just I prefer it in here, I guess.
no, yeah, I'm in here a lot. One time Tammy even said like you hear more than me. And it's like I probably might be, but
I was gonna say I was gonna be something.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I spend a lot of time in here and it's a great philosophical area. And English does not have any good area besides Murphy, I guess, but they're always using that building. So that's
Yeah, I don't really think like when I think about it, like I probably couldn't if you asked me like about my professors and my other major and you said like what do they like to do outside of school or like what's interesting about them, like what's one fun fact about them, I probably could not say anything like that. Like every philosophy professor here, like we know them so well. And then you get to know that like we've had them over and over again versus like in my major, I've had people that I've had once. A lot of them I've never even had. There's like 8 people in my major, like 8 professors, and I've never even had them. I've never talked to them. I've seen them. I don't even really know the names. But like here, it's like you will continue to see the same people. So it's kind of fun because we all get to know each other pretty well.
I guess that could go south if you find yourself not clicking with one of the professors, but even then, I feel like
It's kind of hard.
not saying you
Yeah.
should, but you could avoid one. Like, it is not your teaching style.
They're all pretty easygoing,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, that's a nice. So I can't see around the corner.
Does it make you a better or a worse romantic partner?
See, I should have ended.
My partner also majored in philosophy, so I think we just argue with each other a lot. He couldn't believe that I enjoyed predeterminism theories. So that almost started a fight.
That would be yeah.
But maybe a fight you had to have. Thank you for allowing me that thing.
I don't know, probably worse because sometimes I'm like, we're just chilling. He's minding his own business. And I'm like, wait, let me tell you something I just thought about. Shut your book, shut your laptop, like stop whatever you're doing, listen to my thought right now, or else.
I have to talk about it.
Yeah. So probably maybe worse. But if you could do philosophy and there's other cute philosophy majors, then you could get a romantic partner.
I'm serious.
Well, I'm glad you like that.
He knows the test question.
So thank you very, very much for today and for the last 3 or 4 years as well. The wonderful having you in the building and learning so much from you. There is, I'm told, one more event. It's not a Wednesday afternoon discussion, but it's a Interfaith and Steel Center co-production, Bridges Across Beliefs. It's being led by a student, I understand. It's next Wednesday at 3:30 over in Reeves. I'm afraid I don't know much about it. I was just handed this before we talk, but there's 3 main guests in addition to the student. If you'd like to know more about it, I'll keep the flyer for it up here. I'm sure there'll be displays up in the building across campus. Thank you again.